And there was a crazy stat that came out today as well, which was that they looked at how many yards did Patrick Mahomes run when he was either before throwing the ball or before getting sacked. So how many yards he was running just back in the field, trying to get free with all the rushing defenders coming at him, just trying to get an opportunity to get a spot where you can get a clean pass or get something to happen. Patrick Mahomes ended up running over 497 yards yesterday in the backfield. Almost 500 yards. Patrick Mahomes was forced to just run for his life in this game because the offensive line could not stop the Buccaneers' front four. Welcome to the ChadBurn Show, brought to you by M. Chad Baldwin. Hello and welcome to the ChadBurn Show. I am your host, ChadBurn, and we are back at it after Super Bowl weekend, Super Bowl 55 to be exact, between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. After a full weekend without football, we finally got to have the Super Bowl, and it, let's just say it didn't really turn out to be exactly how everyone expected. That's for damn sure. But it was still a great Super Bowl matchup between two great quarterbacks and great offenses. We're going to break down in this episode kind of the highs and lows of that game, really how some of the players came out and performed, and really, what was the X factor and why, the team that won went ahead. I don't want to give anything away, but I think people know Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll go into their defense, how they really shone bright in this one and were able to stop Patrick Mahomes and go through the numbers. We're also going to obviously talk a little bit Carson Wentz, since obviously the Eagles-centric show. Got to go over the quarterback situation in Philadelphia, the trade destinations that seem to be favorable to Eagles organization right now. We know, obviously, right now it's not so much an if, but when Carson Wentz will get traded. There are rumors it could even be tomorrow on Tuesday, so we'll be finding out shortly. There are obviously two teams that are front runners for the trade between the Chicago Bears and Indianapolis Colts. We'll break down, what we can expect to get out of it, whether or not it'd be a good fit for Carson Wentz, why the teams would be interested, and then maybe cover a few mystery teams that have been kind of reported thanks to Les Bowen, who has covered the Eagles for a very long time. So all that and more, we're going to break down in this latest episode of the ChadBurn Show. So this weekend, obviously, was the Super Bowl. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, it was not what most people expected to happen. The Chiefs were beaten down by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came out and shone bright in this game, mainly showcasing their stellar defense that was able to keep the Chiefs down to under 10 points. That's right, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense kept the high-flying offense of the Kansas City Chiefs to single digits in this game. This was a game that was billed to be a shootout, a game that was expected to be a high-powered offensive game. We expected there to be touchdowns back and forth, to be a regular shootout where they were trading touchdowns on both sides of the field. We thought it would go down to the wire, and these were all the expectations. Hell, the Vegas set the over-under at 56 points. They expected this to be a high-scoring game. It was no doubt that you thought that both teams were going to get in the end zone. And obviously, the Chiefs came in as favorites. The Chiefs were 3-point favorites going this game when they were going to Tampa Bay, where the Super Bowl is being hosted. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were already home. So you'd think they'd get a few points just for playing in their home stadium. But the Chiefs were still favored by 3 points. So most people expected that the Chiefs were going to come out on top in this game due to the fact that they just had a hell of a season. They were one of the best teams in football, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers struggled throughout the season. Now, obviously, the Buccaneers had a great run to Super Bowl, knocking off Aaron Rodgers and the Packers and Drew Brees and the Saints. But still, Patrick Mahomes is another beast. He's able to get the passes when he wants, and he has the weapons to distribute the ball to. When you looked at it on paper, you were just so excited. Because on one side with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, and of course Tom Brady. And then on the other side of the ball, you have Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, you have Mecole Hardman, you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you have Patrick Mahomes. Both teams are stacked. And you just assume that the defense were going to do their best to keep one of the teams at the end zone for a few times. And whichever defense was able to get the edge by keeping the other team out a little longer than the other one was going to be the winner. But this game was just completely flipped on its head because of the stellar defensive performance by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just were all over the Chiefs in this game. And it would just change the game tremendously. It made the team one-dimensional, and they just were not able to get any of the looks they wanted. So when you go into the notes of this one, and kind of what seemed to be the big issues for the Chiefs and how they just could not win this game, the big one is that they fell behind early. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to score touchdowns early in the first half, and the Chiefs were only able to get field goals. And when you're trading field goals for touchdowns, you're eventually just going to get overwhelmed by the other team. And when you try and get out of that hole, if you keep digging yourself down, there's just no way you can get out of this successfully. So the Chiefs fell behind early, and what really forced them to do is become one-dimensional. The Chiefs were forced to pass the ball a lot. Now, we know, obviously, the Chiefs like to pass the ball. And most defenses, when they go in, are going to try and force you to do the weaker part of your game. We assumed the Buccaneers were going to push the Chiefs to actually run the ball more than pass. But unfortunately for the Chiefs, they were given the pass all day. The Buccaneers were like, go for it. You're not going to run the ball on us. You're going to have to pass and go for it. We're sitting too high safety. Tyreek Hill's not going to get behind us. Travis Kelce have the under all day. We don't care. We're just not going to let you get any deep passes like you did earlier in the season against us, when Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes had over 200 yards in the first quarter. The Buccaneers were not letting that happen, and Todd Bowles coached to perfection this one. So the Chiefs had to pass the ball, and the other problem is the game script here, because when the Chiefs fell behind big early on in the first half, 21-6 at halftime, they had to pass the catch up. And in the end, the Chiefs only ran the ball. They rushed the ball only 12 times. 12 times. When the Buccaneers know you're not going to run the ball, all they have to do is just sit back and try and stop everything. Not to mention, the Buccaneers were also able to get to the quarterback consistently. The big downfall for the Chiefs here is that their O-line completely let them down. Now, they were hit with some injuries, and they had to do some reshuffling of the line. That was obvious. And the Chiefs obviously came in not entirely comfortable having to do with their new offensive line. But you thought that they'd be at least able to hold them off a bit. The Chiefs had the number one offensive line for pass this year in the NFL. So you assume that they'd be able to at least muster up something. But unfortunately for them, the Buccaneers just kept coming at them. Pierre-Paul, Vernon, Sue, they were in the backfield all day. And there was a crazy stat that came out today as well, which was that they looked at how many yards did Patrick Mahomes run when he was either before throwing the ball or before getting sacked. So how many yards he was running just back in the field, trying to get free with all the rushing defenders coming at him, just trying to get an opportunity to get a spot where you can get a clean pass or get something to happen. Patrick Mahomes ended up running over 497 yards yesterday in the backfield. Almost 500 yards. Patrick Mahomes was forced to just run for his life in this game because the offensive line could not stop the Buccaneers' front four. The Buccaneers came with 4-5. They were able to get after them with ease. And like I said, the Buccaneers then, when the front 4-5 getting through consistently, they just sat back with a too high safety and allowed them to just keep getting everything underneath. You assume that when you're back in coverage like that the front line for the Buccaneers was not going to have any success getting to Patrick Mahomes, and it's just basically sitting back and hoping nothing goes deep. But, they had no problem getting through the Chiefs' offensive line. The Chiefs' offensive line really let them down. Patrick Mahomes was never comfortable. He's been nursing turf toe for the last 2 weeks. You just assumed that Patrick Mahomes was going to be able to have, was going to be fine, but he was getting killed. He's getting clobbered back there. So there you go. The Chiefs fall behind early, force them to become one-dimensional. They have to pass the ball. The Buccaneers are ready for that. On the other side, they're also able to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, get 3 sacks with just rushing the bare minimum and just completely making Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable. Now, Patrick Mahomes is going to get his passes off, and he's going to do some creative stuff as he always does, like last night diving in the air and able to toss it for 30 yards. But when you're consistently getting to the backfield there and he doesn't have much options deep, it's just not the right formula. And in some ways, I think Andy Reid let them down. We know he's a pass-happy coach. We know he wants to get those passes, but he didn't adapt. And I know they had to go away from the run game because of the game scenario, but in the second half, when they started running the ball, it looked successful. I thought the Chiefs were going to go back to the run game and just keep focusing on that and make the Buccaneers have to fear their run game, but they just gave up so easily on it. They just would not run the ball. I mean, Patrick Mahomes attempted to throw the ball 49 times, and they only rushed 12. It's just not a balanced game. When you look on the other side of the ball, Tom Brady threw 29 times, and they rushed 28, a very balanced game. So Chiefs fall behind. Their offensive line lets them down. They can't run the ball at all. And on top of that, not being able to run the ball, they also had all these drop passes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, to his credit, under duress, running almost 500 yards that game, just trying to stay alive, was still able to get some good passes off. And we saw just drop after drop. I mean, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Williams, they were not able to do a consistent enough game or catch enough passes to make a difference. Now, these were difficult passes, don't get me wrong. In a lot of scenarios, you would expect them to drop these passes. But this has been an elite wide receiver crew all season. They've made these passes look easy, and you expect them to catch it. So when they start dropping it, you just throw your hands up and go, what's going on out here? They just were completely frazzled, the Chiefs offense. And to give credit again, credit is where credit is due. The Bucs defense was the MVP this game. They played incredible. They just did everything they could to disrupt this Chiefs offense, and they were never getting going. Not to mention getting 2 picks off Patrick Mahomes. They played that well. They just completely just negated the effects of Tyreek Hill. And Patrick Mahomes just had nowhere to go. So the defense played incredible. And Todd Bowles, man, oh, what a coach. He schemed this up perfectly, and he knew exactly what he had to do in order to win this game. So you have the Bucs defense playing great, and on the other side of it, their offense was incredible as well. Tom Brady, man, he just doesn't make it complicated. They simplify the offense when they're rushing into either single back or I formation right up the gut. They played it perfectly. The Chiefs couldn't stop it. And then we go to the pass, it's either play action, easy slants, outs. I think they had 1 deep pass they go for. I mean, they just played it so well. And the wide receivers and tight ends for the Buccaneers came alive. I mean, 2 touchdowns to Rob Gronkowski. He was incredible. I mean, you couldn't even tell that he'd been retired for a season. He looked great. And the Chiefs' defense let them down big time. Now, again, like I said, not taking anything away from Tom Brady, who had himself a hell of a game. It was incredible to watch him play because this is his 10th Super Bowl, and he doesn't look like he's lost a step. He's 43 years old, and he's still kicking ass. I mean, he played to perfection. Tom Brady went 21 for 29, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns, and only gave up a sack. I mean, not a ton of yardage, but he only missed 8 passes. When you have that kind of efficiency and accuracy, I mean, how else are you ever going to stop this guy? He made every pass he needed to make. And the other point we had to point out to this, and this is the last point really of how this game went away from the Chiefs, is that Tom Brady's playing incredible, but the Chiefs defense just gave up so many stupid penalties. Tom Brady had such success because he was given 110 yards by the Chiefs defense on penalties. They were just giving it away. Now, I will say a lot of calls by the refs with regards to holding and the pass interference were not great calls. In a lot of instances, they were ticky-tacky. It didn't really need to happen. They weren't really holding on. But in reality, they are penalties. That is a hold, and that is a flag. Pass interference in all those instances. It's just most refs would let that go. But early on, the refs were calling those fouls. You knew they were going to throw the flag for that. And so they were consistent throughout the whole game. So on the Chiefs side of the ball, I mean, if you know they're going to call the slightest kind of grab and hindrance of the wide receiver, then don't touch them. Just don't. It's not that hard to figure out. Just get discipline and play to the ref's style. The refs were calling everything. So then back the fuck off. Stop trying to get up on these wide receivers. You're not going to be successful there. So the Chiefs just gave away constant holding and penalties after penalty. I mean, they just had no shot. The cornerbacks had no discipline, and Tyrann Mathieu was was freaking out there. It was brutal. So Tom Brady is playing so efficiently. His wide receivers have come alive. They're all playing excellent football. And on the other side of the ball, the Chiefs are just giving up constant penalties. They couldn't do a thing. I mean, look at the Buccaneers defense come alive and just look at the dreck that the Chiefs defense brought out there. They couldn't get pressure on Tom Brady. They couldn't cover the wide receivers. It just, nothing was going their way. I mean, yes, granted, they got a couple stops here and there. And they had to sack on Tom Brady, and they were able to force some 3-and-outs. But in all honesty, they just had no control of that game. I mean, the Buccaneers, 3 touchdowns in the first half. They get a touchdown. They get 2 touchdowns in the second half. I mean, again, you felt for them because the Chiefs just had no answers with Tom Brady. And again, how good is Tom Brady? I mean, he comes to Tampa Bay Buccaneers in one season and takes them to the Super Bowl. And not only that, he's not only got to the Super Bowl and winning another one against 7th championship, the man was talking smack on the field. Did anyone see that exchange between Tyrann Mathieu and Tom Brady? It was incredible. The dude's 43 years old, and he's getting in the face of a younger player. Like, it was I know we see Tom Brady as this relaxed, chill guy out all day. Like, he has a very calm demeanor when you see him in the press. But the dude competes. And I knew he was a tough competitor. I mean, no one wins 7 Super Bowls and goes to 10, and they're not strong competitors. Like, we know that. But, man, to see him actually getting in the face and talking shit with Tyrann Mathieu, that was awesome. I loved it. That was exactly what I wanted to see there. I couldn't believe what was going down. And then you have Tyrann Mathieu after the game saying that Tom Brady called him a mean name and he won't repeat it. I mean, dude, you started it. Dude, you were the one that put your finger in Tom Brady's face. What did you expect when you go off on Tom Brady? Like, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, he must have been like the rest of us and thought Tom Brady was going to be calm and chill. But, man, Tom Brady went after him. Like, you could say all you want and think that Tom Brady is bad and that the media is coming after you, but you clearly said something to piss the man off. I mean, Tom Brady doesn't even run in a game, and yet he ran almost down the whole field just to talk shit in your face. That's how much Tyrann Mathieu pissed off Tom Brady. I mean, the man was he was so mad. It was incredible. He was like on the sideline, just like, fuck him. Like, Tom Brady got into his head so hard, and he was so pissed. I mean, to the point that he was targeting Tyrann Mathieu on the other side of the ball. The touchdown pass he threw to Antonio Brown in the end zone, I mean, I think there were other wide receivers open besides Antonio Brown. But Tyrann Mathieu was covering him, so Tom Brady tried to make a statement. He threw it right at Antonio Brown and basically just boxed out Tyrann Mathieu, and they got a touchdown. I mean, if I was on the defense with Tyrann Mathieu, I would have got in his face and told him to shut the fuck up. Like, what are you doing that to Tom Brady? Why would you poke the bear? The man is great. Do not give him more incentive to be greater. Like, he's out of his mind to think that he could have mind games with Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady is the GOAT for a reason. Like, you can't mess with him like that. So, I mean, from Tyrann Mathieu to the defense and the holding penalties, I mean, they were a mess. When they were going to halftime, you saw Tyrann Mathieu just slamming his helmet. He's throwing a hissy fit on the sideline. Like, he's about to cry. Like, it was ridiculous. Steve Spagnuolo could not get his defense under control. And the man has had some great Super Bowls. He's a great coach and all. But he lost that defense. They had no discipline in that game. It was brutal. I mean, some of them were even blatant. I think it was Breland on one side when he lost. I think it was either Mike Evans. I mean, he just straight up dove and swiped at the legs of Evans. I mean, they were just making blatant penalty after blatant penalty. You can't give Tom Brady that great position. You can't do that. He's going to score on you every time. And that's what they did. I mean, Tom Brady only had 201 yards, but 3 touchdowns because he had great field position throughout the game. And the Chiefs just blew it. Whether it's the offense, the line's not doing it right, and Patrick Mahomes running for his life, or the special teams where Butker is shanking it after doing a great one and then getting a penalty, or the defense is just letting the run through and giving up penalties. I mean, all aspects of the game were brutal for the Chiefs. If you're a fan, it was just tough to watch. Now, if you're a Bucs fan, it was great. It was everything you wanted. You had a solid run game. You were passing the ball great. Your defense showed up. I mean, the MVP of the Super Bowl was that defense, bar none. It was so good to see. I mean, like some stats to look at. All right, so let's go through the stats here. Patrick Mahomes, 26 of 49. The 49 times, barely got over half his pass completed. 270 yards, 2 interceptions, and 3 sacks. Again, harassed and making bad mistakes. He also had to run for 33 yards on 5 rushes. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 9 rushes for only 64 yards. Travis Kelce still getting his yards with 15 targets for 10 receptions and 133 yards. And Tyreek Hill only 7 receptions for 73 yards. I mean, this was, again, this is how the game went. Patrick Mahomes got some yardage, but never could get in the end zone. Tyreek Hill couldn't break free and go big. He had to get short passes. They let Travis Kelce get the volume, get the passes underneath, but they just weren't going to let him go past them. The Buccaneers defense had a great plan, and Todd Bowles' defense, they executed. On the other side of the ball, Tom Brady, 21 for 29, as we mentioned, for 201 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 sack he gave up. Leonard Fournette eventually helped out the rushing game with 16 rushes for 89 yards, a touchdown, and then adding on 4 receptions for 46 yards. Ronald Jones also helped out with 61 yards on 12 rushes. And then the big beneficiaries of Tom Brady's excellent game and obviously his 5th MVP of Super Bowl performance, Gronkowski with 6 receptions for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Antonio Brown with a lone touchdown, only 22 yards, but still getting it done. I mean, that is the tale of the tape. Those were the 2 different sides of the ball. Efficiency and touchdowns on one, yardage, but just not getting it done on the other side. I mean, man, the Bucs, again, I just can't give enough praise to Todd Bowles. They did exactly what they wanted to do. They made the Chiefs one-dimensional. They were able to kind of get the Chiefs up, get behind the Chiefs. They were able to just get everything they wanted and force Tyreek Hill to stay under. The 2-high safety worked like a charm. Enough said. There was genius work by Todd Bowles. They had a strategy, and they executed to perfection. Now, obviously, I got every prediction wrong so far in the playoffs. I picked the Chiefs. I bet on the Chiefs. I bet on the over. Didn't get that right. That's for damn sure. So, I mean, again, the Buccaneers played a hell of a game. Well-deserved by Tom Brady. 7th Super Bowl, 5th Super Bowl MVP. He just consistently get it done. And he, of course, announced he'll be back next year. I mean, he won. Why wouldn't he come back one more time? I mean, if you're a Bucs fan, it is awesome to go from the dreck of the league to now Super Bowl champion. Took one season. Like, if you want to ever talk about how great Tom Brady can be, it took one season and took a team to the Super Bowl. I mean, no other player can do that. And great, like this team, and we always mention this about the defense, we always thought the Buccaneers defense could be good. I mentioned on this show, right when Tom Brady was getting traded to him, that I thought the defense could really turn around. Like, they had on their lineup great players. But they had last year been one of the worst defenses in the league. And I always believed, and most people out there, I think it was pretty obvious, the reason they had been so poor and statistically one of the worst in the league is that they were constantly dealing with bad field position thanks to Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston threw a record number of interceptions last year. And those turnovers were just killer to that defense. They had to be constantly on the field, and they constantly had to work with their other team being within the 50 on their side of the field. They never had an enjoyable time where they could take on an offense that's got pinned on their 10-yard line or at the 20-yard line. They were stuck constantly defending short field situations. So I think we knew that they were going to get better. We knew with a quarterback like Tom Brady who can give you time to breathe, score, give you a chance to defense to collect themselves and play better. I mean, it was exactly what they needed. They needed that offense to click, and the defense just followed suit, and it was so well done. All around, a great team performance by the Buccaneers. We didn't hit the over, but still a great team. 31-9, the Buccaneers silenced the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are going to have to figure out a lot this offseason. I mean, that was very disappointing. I mean, a lot's going to be that O-line, but I think the play calling by Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy did not help. They did not play to the strengths of that game. I think they should have run the ball a lot more, establish a run game at least, get some pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they were just constantly bull rushing him, and a run game could have helped that. But again, only 12 total rushes in that game. I mean, what are you going to do at that point? So Chiefs fans, I do feel sorry for you. It's a tough one to swallow. You kind of assume that this would be the next back-to-back championship since Tom Brady and the Patriots did in 03-04. But just, again, not able to get it done. Still, a great game. But just disappointing for the Chiefs for sure. But, again, we'll see who comes back next year. We very well could see both these teams in the Super Bowl again next year and maybe get a rematch between Mahomes and Tom Brady. It's definitely a tough battle now for Mahomes, to try and be the greatest of all time. When Tom Brady's got 7, it's hard to chase 7 rings. That's for damn sure. But no, again, excellent game. Buccaneers beat the Chiefs 31-9. Bucs dominate on defense and just put together a stellar performance. Congratulations to that whole coaching staff. Bruce Arians, Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles. Just an excellent game and really a super game for a Super Bowl. All right, folks, now, of course, we got to turn to Carson Wentz and the Eagles. So real quick, we're just going to dive into this one. Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles, whole relationship is done. We know it's done. It's just not tenable anymore. The relationship is fractured. The Carson Wentz clearly doesn't feel that he can trust them anymore. He doesn't feel that they've built a team around him. I know that the Eagles think they've tried to build around and try to build up Carson Wentz's confidence, but with Hurts coming there, the way he played this season, it's just not going to happen. He's got to go somewhere else to kind of revitalize his career. I think the Eagles know that. So trade offers have started coming in. The Eagles have been using common language like every year, saying, we're not actively looking to trade, but of course, if, someone comes with a great offer, we'll take it. We'll have to listen. I mean, they do this constantly, but, this time it seems to be more serious. Carson Wentz has not come out to squash any of the trade rumors or say he's excited to be with the Eagles. It seems to just be more evidence that he doesn't want to be here. So it's time to go. Like we said at the top of the show, it's not longer so much an if, it's a when. And a lot of people think it's going to be happening sooner than later. So Carson Wentz has got to go, but who are going to be the suitors? Obviously, it's a big cap hit to the Eagles, who would take on about $37 million in dead cap hit. But the new team that acquires Carson Wentz will not be so much of an issue for, obviously, for a salary. Because once Carson Wentz gets a new team, he's only guaranteed 2 years, about $44 million. It would make his annual salary around the 19th highest in the league for quarterbacks. So it's not that expensive. It's affordable. So many teams can take on that cap hit. And then after 2 years, if you want to cut loose to Carson Wentz, no ramifications. You can just get rid of him and go. So who would be interested in that? Obviously, the big names have been topping all the rumors. The ones that I think are the landing spot for Carson Wentz would be the Chicago Bears and Indianapolis Colts. The Chicago Bears seem like kind of an obvious fit, mainly because John DeFilippo is there. DeFilippo, who was the quarterback's coach for Carson Wentz in the 2017 season and was very close and had a strong relationship with Carson Wentz. He might be someone that could get in there and revitalize Carson Wentz's career. He knows how to get the best out of him. He knows how to get to that strength, that 2017 level. So maybe the Chicago Bears take a chance on him and think that they can do better. Obviously, the Chicago Bears only have Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles on their roster, so they're looking for an upgrade. Apparently in this trade deal as well, which just goes to show how crappy this Eagles organization has gotten. Apparently in this trade deal, if the Eagles were to trade with the Chicago Bears, they might get Nick Foles back. That's right. The Eagles, who got rid of Nick Foles in order to back their franchise quarterback in Carson Wentz. Nick Foles, who lost his starting position to Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville and then lost his starting position to Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago. That's the guy we're bringing back. Ugh, the dysfunction on this team. Now, again, don't get me wrong. Nick Foles did some incredible things for this Eagle organization by bringing the first ever Super Bowl to the city. It's incredible. He was an MVP for a reason that year. I mean, he played excellent, but he is no longer the same Nick Foles. He is older, and he's just not as talented as a lot of the younger quarterbacks out there. Now, I can accept Nick Foles coming back if, obviously, he knows it's going to be a mentorship position. He would be a great mentor for Jalen Hurts. I think he could help him really get acquainted with the city and help him be a good quarterback. That is if we think Jalen Hurts is the future. I still have a lot of question marks around Jalen Hurts, but he could be at least the quarterback for this next season. But if we bring Nick Foles with the idea that he could maybe start, I mean, God, Can you imagine the fans that would start calling in and being, the second Jalen Hurts plays poorly, let's get Nick Foles in there. Nick Foles should be starting. Da, da, da. Oh, it's just setting up for a PR nightmare. You'd think the Eagles would learn after they drafted Hurts, not thinking it would affect Wentz's play or that it wouldn't be a big deal, and then all of a sudden having to realize it was a huge deal and a big problem to Carson Wentz and was just a PR nightmare in its own. You'd think they learn and wouldn't just bring back another controversial person in Nick Foles. I mean, there's fans out there now that still think Nick Foles should be the quarterback today. So that's one option, and the Bears could do that, and then we get Nick Foles, and then we have all this fun offseason chatter. The other good fit would be the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are headed by Frank Reich, who was the offensive coordinator for Carson Wentz during 2017 season. Frank Reich has a strong reputation of building up quarterbacks. He's got a great track record so far. Hell, he got Phillip Rivers to perform great after throwing 20 interceptions the season before. Carson Wentz only threw 15 last year, and I say only as in one of the worst of all time, but there's still a lot of chance you could get the best out of him. And Frank Reich has proven that he can do that with quarterbacks. He builds and schemes his playbook to the strengths of the quarterback that he has on his team. Something that I criticize Doug Pearson all the time for not being able to do, not being flexible, sticking to your playbook without you going to the strengths of the quarterback. And I think Frank Reich could do that for Carson Wentz. So there's definitely a strong opportunity for them in Indianapolis. It's the place, it's the destination I've been preaching since coming to the conclusion that obviously Carson Wentz has to go. And as a fan of Carson Wentz, admitting to myself it's time for him to get out of here. But I think the Colts would be a great landing spot for him. I think that it's a young team with great talent on the offensive side of the ball, good wide receiver depth. You have a great young running back in Taylor, and the defense is really well suited to be strong next year. I think the defense is kind of what Carson Wentz needs, because you need a defense that can at least keep you in games if the offense isn't clicking. So I think it's the ideal location for Carson Wentz, just because he could fit in right into an offense that's ready to go. And if you have a coach like Frank Reich who can get the best out of you, why not? I don't think we'll see the best that Carson Wentz was like in 2017. But you can still get back to the 2018, 2019 levels where he was a decent quarterback. I don't think that's impossible. And Frank Reich could probably get it done. So the Colts would be an excellent landing spot for Carson Wentz. And I'd rather trade with them because I think we get more out of it. But, if they're not willing to go with multiple first-round picks, I think it's going to end up going to the highest bidder, which could be the Bears if they're desperate enough. But there have been some interesting tweets recently about some mystery teams that could be involved in this trade as well. Like the Colts and Bears have been named. It's well known that they're already inquiring about Carson Wentz and they're putting some deals forward to Howie Roseman. So we know that the Colts and Bears are involved. But what we don't know is who these mystery teams are. And apparently there's a third team that has kind of gotten into the equation that has put forward a trade deal that could at least entice the Eagles to consider it. So let's kind of think about who these teams could be and who would be kind of an interesting landing spot for them. So there's three teams that have been mostly talked about as possibly being the mystery team in this equation. One would be the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas Raiders obviously have Derek Carr, but I think they probably want to move forward. Derek Carr is getting paid, I think, almost as much as Carson Wentz, so it's not a huge big change if you go from Carson Wentz to Derek Carr. It means Derek Carr could also be involved in a trade to the Eagles, which would at least create some depth and somewhat a depth in the quarterback position, at least some competition. But the Las Vegas Raiders and John Gruden specifically, I think it's been confirmed / rumored that he's not a big fan of Derek Carr. So he could want to bring in a new quarterback, and he's got a pretty strong offensive mind. So why not believe you could probably get the best at Carson Wentz? He's talented enough to play a decent amount of football. Why not do it that way? The other element to this is that the GM for the Las Vegas Raiders, Mike Mayock, is a bit of a fan of Carson Wentz. And if he gets so enamored that he thinks that he can get Carson Wentz away and trade some draft capital to the Eagles, he might make that move. And why not? When you have a very strong offensive set again that just needs at least a competent quarterback to get them rolling. We've seen the success Derek Carr had this year. Why not take a chance on Carson Wentz? You have John Gruden, who is supposed to be a great quarterbacks coach. Why not at least put him in the equation and see if he can get the best out of Carson? I don't know if Nelson Aguilar would be happy to see him, but, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, you have a good core there that could really lift up Carson Wentz in this equation. The other one's obviously Denver Broncos. John Elway being the quarterback's guy. Is he sold on Drew Lock? Drew Lock's had up and downs. I mean, Drew Lock kind of seems like Baker Mayfield light, so I don't know if that's the guy you want to kind of pass the keys off for your franchise to. Maybe they think they can get more out of Drew Lock. Maybe they continue to coach him up so they don't have to do a big trade, get rid of the capital to go to the Eagles to bring in Carson Wentz. But it'd be also a good fit. I mean, again, young talent. They have a good, obviously, GM there. They have a good coach. I think that the Broncos will, I think they could hopefully get the best out of Carson Wentz. I don't think it's the best fit, but, why not? It seems to be a destination that could be possible for him. And, John Elway, I think, recognizes some talent in there they think can get out of him and might pull the trigger. The final one, which I think is the least likely trade partner, would be the Patriots. I mean, Bill Belichick's definitely the one who I think could get a lot out of Carson Wentz, but I don't know if it would be a great fit. I mean, they're a very rigid system. Like, yes, they adapt every year, but Josh McDaniels obviously wants to coach a certain way. And as much as he was able to change his playbook for Cam Newton, it didn't really work this season. We didn't see the Patriots really excel, and they kind of dropped down. So if you bring in Carson Wentz, who's only a few legs up on Cam Newton, I mean, what kind of offense are you getting out of that? You don't have much wide receiver help. You don't really have a running game. I mean, if you're going to have to rely solely on Carson Wentz, I don't think he's going to get done. Carson Wentz needs to go to a team in a location that has some offensive weapons that can kind of lift up his talent without having to make people better around him. He's at a stage right now, especially after that horrendous season, that he's not the one that's going to lift people up to a higher level. The team is going to have to bring him up and make sure that he can play in a system that works. So I don't know if Patriots are the best spot for that, and Bill Belichick, and they're certainly not going to be desperate and give away a bunch of picks. So again, if it goes the highest bidder, I don't think the Patriots have a shot there. I mean, there's no way that Bill Belichick's going to sanction giving away multiple first round or second round draft picks for Carson Wentz. So we'll see. I still think, obviously, it seems that the Bears are the front runner. I think Indianapolis Colts would be the best option for him, but with it's going to come down to, I think, who has the best offer. It seems to be that the baseline trade that the Eagles want would be 2 first-round picks for Carson Wentz. So whoever's going to be able to give up those 2 first rounds, maybe a first and 2 seconds, I think that's going to be the one that comes away with Carson Wentz. So we will see if anything comes about in the next few days. Most reports out there think it should be this week that we should get a deal. I'm sure the Eagles would like to get something written down before, the deadline comes in March 17th when all trades can actually be finalized. But, at least to get something in principle so they can start planning around the cap space, because it's going to be just terrible this season. I mean, you're going to have to rely on Jalen Hurts being the quarterback for this season. You hope he can be the future for him. I mean, we've seen some okay talent, but I didn't like how the season ended with him, so I don't know if he really is the answer at that position. And you're not going to draft a quarterback this year, so build up some draft capital, get some first round picks. Try and strip the team down as much as you can to make as much cap space here, and just go with what you have. I think that this season's not going to be a winning season, and you just kind of hope for the best. I see the Eagles being maybe like a 6-10 team, 5-11. I just don't see them as being, a top tier team this year. So it's going to be really a tough one for them. It's unfortunate because you're going to waste a year of some of the talent on the Eagles roster for the Eagles roster. And obviously, Miles Sanders is the one that comes to mind. I think that we want to continue to build a good team around so we can utilize that running back talent. But, a lot of retooling needs to be done. Carson Wentz out. You need to focus on the defense, the secondary, the aging players in the wide receiver position, the defensive line, the linebacker needs to be addressed. I mean, there's just so much needs to get done. So I don't think they get that all done this season. I think you focus on getting Wentz to another team. You build up the draft capital. You start making space. You start cutting players that you can move on from, like Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun freaking Jackson. And then you start using the talent you have and wait. And then next year will be the year to really go after it. And I think they'll have to draft big in 2022. And they're going to have to really bring in some outside talent to help them out. But, I think we as fans need to accept that's how the season will go, and get ready for a long one. But, yeah. But anyways, we will keep you abreast with, obviously, the trade rumors we hear. Maybe next week we'll be able to talk about big trade the different compensation we get for Carson Wentz and how that will help Howie Roseman plan for the future. But until then, we'll keep our ear to the ground and wait to see where he goes. Again, my money would be on the Colts, but I do hear that the Bears are the favorites. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But, fingers crossed we get a good deal of this one. All right, folks, and with that, we're going to wrap up the show, episode 69 of the ChadBurn Show. Thank you so much for always joining in and listening. It's fun to talk about the Super Bowl. Amazing to break down, what went right and what went seriously wrong for the Chiefs and how the Buccaneers prevailed. The incredibleness that is Tom Brady and how he's able to just continue to kick ass every year, and will unfortunately be stuck with him for another year, that's for sure. And then obviously breaking down the Carson Wentz trade propositions that we've heard so far. So it has been very interesting for sure. It's been a fun one. We'll hopefully have more information next week on Carson Wentz and where he ended up. And we'll soon be getting into basketball. It is now time for us to talk basketball. Football season is over, so we'll focus on the 76ers, the first place 76ers with the MVP candidate Joel Embiid. So excited to get into that and more. But, it's been a great one on football and, in general, a great episode. So we'll sign off on the Super Bowl episode there. Thank you again for listening in. And until next time, have a good evening and good night. Thank you for listening to the ChadBurn Show. Remember to check out all new episodes every Monday at 7 p.m. on Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all major platforms where you listen to your podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me and want to send in your questions or requests for topics to discuss in the show, you can email chadburn.show@gmail.com. All episodes have video recorded, which is then posted to our YouTube channel, The ChadBurn Show. Be sure to subscribe to us where you get your podcasts or on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our new content. You can also follow the show on Instagram at ChadBurn Show and on Facebook, The ChadBurn Show, to see clips from previously recorded episodes and information on all upcoming shows.